So, this was me 4 years ago. I was 19 years old and an engineering student. Don't I look happy and hopeful? Well, the truth is, I wasn't. I hated what I was studying. I did not want to be just an engineer. I mean, look at what these people wear every day to work. But besides that, I felt that a lot of what was taught and implemented in engineering didn't speak to what I wanted to add to society. So one day, on my way to class, instead I walked to the registration office and I deregistered. Now, leading up to me dropping out, conversations on mental health were becoming more and more mainstream. And I began to wonder, was I depressed? I mean, a lot of the symptoms that spoke to what depression was something that I felt I was going through. I felt a deep sense of disengagement with my work. I hated going to school. And no amount of pseudo-social life or motivational videos on YouTube seemed to cure this feeling. But it wasn't depression. So what was it? And after I dropped out, the place that I found myself in didn't make sense to me. You see, all my life, I had gotten impressive grades, and for that, I had gotten awards. And school had told me that that meant I had a high IQ. School had also told me that in order for you to be successful, you needed to prove a high IQ by getting a lot of awards. You had to also work hard, and failure was not acceptable. And that's how you would be successful. So this was the first time that I'd failed in my life. And to me, if I wasn't that smart girl, I began to ask myself, who was I? I felt so alone in that time, and I wondered how many other academics went through what I went through. Were they also doing great, or were they just as bad as me? And I found a study that actually confirmed that I was indeed not alone. The Council of Higher Education reported that 50% of students that walk into higher education institutions drop out in their first year, and others like me even further along in their degrees. They reported that ultimately less than 50% of these students end up graduating. Ladies and gentlemen, these students that you call dropouts are part of the top 18% of academics in this country between the ages of 18 to 24 years old. And now that I've found just how many young, talented, bright minds out there we were losing as a country due to the higher education institutions, I wanted to call this thing, this place, this rut that we had all found ourselves, a name. And I began to call it academic dysphoria. Now, academic dysphoria is characterized by the profound state of unease and dissatisfaction in academia. Its symptoms are feeling a deep disconnection in your schoolwork, not really knowing where this is going, but I have to finish it because frameworks. Now, I began to wonder, after finding out this information, that did this mean that all of those other students that went on to graduate were not plagued by this academic dysphoria? Did they find themselves on the other side in academic euphoria, in a deep sense of happiness and excitement about their work and their careers? And I was disappointed to find that in a study conducted in 200 countries and workers around the world, they confirmed that 85% of people admitted to hating their jobs. And 70% of those people that had gone to university before getting those jobs admitted to have hated it from school. Now, ladies and gentlemen, 70% and 85% are huge numbers. In this room, That would be 17 out of every 20 people here. That would mean almost this entire row of people woke up on most days this year dreading their own existence over a job. Now, this had me confused. If a high IQ that had awards and accomplishments, hard work, and a degree didn't guarantee not being plagued by this dysphoria of academia, and it didn't guarantee success, then what did? What ensured a meaningful school career that enables us to make a tangible impact in the world using our academia in all levels of education? So this is when I further investigated where it all began, the school experience. Now, I wanted to find out, how do schools equip learners with learning models that are tools that enable us to achieve learning outcomes both in school and outside in the real world? And this is what I found out. Disappointingly enough, schools do not use learning models. They use teaching frameworks, which means that teachers teach in such a way and they assess in such a way that is most convenient for them to achieve their goals as teachers, and not in such a way that is most convenient and enabling for the child to learn. Now, isn't that crazy? So this is when I found out that basically, if we would change the game and use learning models, because learning models actually inform how learning works, whereas frameworks only list and differentiate existing information. Now, the problem with that is that it makes us academics believe that our greatest ideas are at their best if they are on papers with A's on them, if they are on submissions written excellent, if your academic paper is published, and if your thesis is celebrated in small, prestigious spaces. These frameworks lead us to believe that our greatest ideas cannot exist out there in the world ungraded, but just as excellent. But all is not lost. The exciting part is that when you get to university, you get a chance to either use these learning models or to learn them. And the great thing about learning models is that they work the same way the brain does. And this is how our brain works. So the brain's job is to forget just as much it is to remember, right? And for you, in order to remember academic work, and for it to move from your initial memory in order to get to your long-term memory, it needs to induce two stimuli. The first is emotional. So you need to be passionate or excited about what you're learning. And number two, you need to be curious. You need to want to know what happens after this. That is the only time that information moves from your initial memory in order to get it to your long-term memory. But the problem with this is that, do these excellent academic papers only deserve to live in our long-term memories or in university databases? The problem with this is that, do we also expect that these excellent academic papers, when actually converted into real solutions, do we expect for them to never fail? By a show of hands, how many of you here have never failed at something that you were passionate about? Okay, good. I'm in the right room. This is when we add the last ingredient to our learning model, and that is grit. Now, grit is a combination of passion and perseverance to our goals and long-term commitments over a long period of time, regardless of failure. Can everybody say, regardless of failure?
Regardless of failure.
And grit is the most determining indicator of success over the long run. Because it ensures that no matter how many times you fail, you get back up again and again and again. Now, as academics, if we wish to live on the other side of dysphoria, which is euphoria, we need to not only come up with pioneering and groundbreaking work, but we need to urgently pursue the transformation of these ideas from just papers and into real-life solutions, changing, impacting, and changing ordinary African lives. And in order to do that, we need to give less of an F word about failure. And that F word is fear. We need to be fearless. Now today, I ask you all to not only think about when you are in these walls and wherever else that you are learning about what you want to be when you grow up, or what do you want to become after you have learned what you have learned. But I want you to think, what do I want to create? What problems do I want to solve? And ultimately, what solutions do I want to invent to address those problems? Thank you. Yeah.